Today, we're talking about the California Gold Rush. It's a story you think you know. Fortune, adventure, the American dream. But it's also a story with a really dark side. One that came with a staggering price. Okay, so before we even get to California, we have to go to North Carolina. Seriously, get this. In 1799, a 12-year-old kid finds this massive, weird-looking rock. His family has no idea what it is, so they use it as a doorstop. For 3 years. Finally, his dad takes it to a jeweler who offers him a measly $3.50. Well, it turns out that rock was almost pure gold, worth a fortune. And that little doorstop kicked off America's first gold rush, creating a whole generation of miners who were about to be very, very busy. And that brings us west to California. At the beginning of 1848, it was this quiet, sprawling territory that had just become part of the U.S. But one little glimmer in a river was about to change the course of history. What's wild about this timeline is just how fast everything happened. So January 24th, James Marshall sees something shiny. Just 9 days later, in a completely unrelated event, the U.S. officially gets California from Mexico. Neither government has a clue what's just been found. The secret holds for a few months, until a guy named Sam Brannan runs through the streets of San Francisco shouting "gold" and waving a bottle full of it. The city basically empties out overnight. Then, the final match is lit on December 5th, when President Polk himself announces it to Congress. And with that, the secret was out and the floodgates were open. You've got a feel for John Sutter, the guy who owned the mill. He had this big dream of building a huge farming empire. He knew a gold rush would completely destroy that dream, bringing chaos and squatters. So he desperately tried to make his workers swear to secrecy. But, I mean, come on, a secret that big? There was no way it was gonna hold. And just like he feared, his workers left, his land was overrun, and his dream completely fell apart. Once the president confirmed it, gold fever went global. It set off one of the biggest, fastest mass migrations in American history. It felt like the entire world was packing its bags for California. To really understand the scale of what happened, you have to look at this. In 1847, San Francisco was this sleepy little port town, population about 500 people. That's it, a tiny dot on the map. And then this, 5 years later, 150,000 people. It's just an unbelievable explosion. We're not talking about gradual growth, we're talking about a quiet town becoming a chaotic, sprawling city, seemingly overnight. So who were all these people? We call them the 49ers, but they came from literally everywhere. And here's a fun fact. Because it took so long to travel overland from the East Coast, thousands of people from Mexico, Chile, China, and even Hawaii got there first. The gold rush was an international event from day one. But that dream of just picking gold nuggets off the ground, yeah, that faded fast. The reality was absolutely brutal. We're talking back-breaking labor, standing in ice-cold water all day, malnutrition was rampant, diseases like cholera and scurvy tore through the camps, and on top of that, it was a violent, dangerous place to be. But for all the hardship individuals faced, the sheer volume of gold coming out of the ground created an economic boom like nothing the world had ever seen. It literally built the state of California as we know it. Just look at this number. In 1852 alone, at the absolute peak, miners dug up $81 million worth of gold. In today's money, that's over $2.8 billion in a single year. That kind of cash injection just supercharged the entire American economy. And here's the real kicker. The people who got seriously rich usually weren't the miners. They were the smart entrepreneurs who sold things to the miners. You need pickaxes and lumber? A whole manufacturing industry pops up. You need somewhere safe to keep your gold? Banks like Wells Fargo are born. You need pants that won't fall apart? Well, a guy named Levi Strauss has an idea for that. All this activity built roads, bridges, and eventually, the railroad that connected the coasts. All of that growth had huge political consequences. The population boom was so massive that California got to skip the whole waiting period of being a territory. It went straight to applying for statehood and got it in 1850. Now, to put that in perspective, neighboring territories like Arizona and New Mexico, they had to wait more than 60 years to become states. The gold rush put California on the ultimate fast track. But all of this progress, this incredible growth, it came at a horrific cost. And we have to talk about it. For every success story, there are thousands of stories of devastation. This is the other side of the coin, the true price of all that gold. This really gets to the heart of it. The dream, the promise, was that anyone could show up and strike it rich. It was the ultimate fresh start. But the reality for so many was a brutal, lawless fight for survival that left deep, permanent scars on both the people and the land itself. So, before the rush, California was not some empty land waiting to be claimed. It was home to roughly 150,000 Native Americans. Look at this chart. They made up 95% of the population. This was their home. And just 20 years later, this was the result, an 80% decline. The arrival of hundreds of thousands of miners was a catastrophe for the native peoples. Their lands were stolen, their food sources destroyed, and they were systematically killed by disease, starvation, and straight-up murder. It was a genocide, plain and simple. Chinese immigrants who had come seeking Gold Mountain also faced incredible cruelty. They were seen as foreign competition and were targeted with special taxes, racist laws, and vicious mob violence. This deep-seated racism eventually led to the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882, which flat-out banned their immigration. Now, as the gold on the surface got harder to find, the mining methods became more and more destructive. The worst was hydraulic mining. You're talking about giant water cannons blasting with so much pressure they could literally wash away entire hillsides just to sift through the debris for gold. And the environmental damage was apocalyptic. All that mud and rock choked the rivers, which caused massive flooding that destroyed farms downstream. To get the gold out of the dirt, they used tons of mercury, a poison that seeped into the water and soil. We're still dealing with that toxic legacy today. Much of that mercury is still sitting at the bottom of the San Francisco Bay. Just listen to this quote from a local newspaper written decades after the rush peaked. "Forsaken and desolate, the scorched earth overworked and abandoned." It paints this picture of a landscape that was just completely torn apart and then just left for dead. The boom was over, but the scars were permanent. So what do we do with a story like this? The gold rush was simultaneously an incredible engine of creation and a terrifying engine of destruction. Its legacy isn't simple. It's brilliant and it's deeply tainted. And that's really the main takeaway here. Yes, the gold rush created immense wealth and launched California into the future. But we have to remember what that progress was built on. It was built on stolen land, on racial violence, and on environmental destruction that we are still paying for. You cannot tell one side of that story without the other. And that leaves us with one last question to think about. The gold rush was all about high-risk gambles, about creating unbelievable wealth, and about disrupting everything in its path, often displacing whatever was there before. When you put it like that, does that sound familiar? You have to wonder if that same spirit is alive and well in California's tech industry today. It's something to think about. Thanks for watching.